I don't know what to do. The voice outside my bedroom door at 12:43 in the morning sounded exactly like my new roommate, and that was the entire point. I had moved into the apartment 11 days earlier. I had moved in because the rent was $300 below market for the neighborhood, because the listing had been posted by a woman my age who had answered all 4 of my screening questions in long, careful paragraphs, and because the apartment had been available the week my previous lease had ended, which had been the week I had needed it to be available. The woman who lived there was named Hadassah Wren. She was 31. She worked overnight shifts as a nurse at a hospital 12 minutes away. She had been in the apartment for 3 years. She had been looking for a roommate for 2 months because her previous one had moved in with a partner. She had given me the keys on a Saturday afternoon. She had walked me through the apartment. She had shown me which shelf in the refrigerator was hers and which was mine, where the spare light bulbs were kept, how the front door deadbolt sometimes stuck in cold weather. She had been pleasant and direct. She had answered my questions about the building, about the neighbors, about the trash schedule. Then, at the front door, just before she left for her shift that first evening, she had stopped with her hand on the doorknob, turned around, and given me the one rule. She had said, "Iris, there is one thing I need to tell you, and it is going to sound strange. I am only going to say it once. If you hear me knock on the front door of this apartment after midnight or on your bedroom door, do not open it. I do not care what I say. I do not care what voice I use. I do not care if I am crying. I do not care if I tell you I have lost my keys. I do not care if I tell you somebody is hurt. I have a key. I always have my key. I have never, in 3 years, lost it. I do not knock on doors in this apartment after midnight. Ever. If you hear what sounds like me, knocking, after midnight, asking you to open the door, do not open it. Stay in your room. Do not answer. Do not call out. Do not engage. Wait. I will explain more when I get home in the morning. Tonight, I just need you to agree to the rule." I had laughed. I had not been able to help it. The sentence had been so unlike anything else she had said in the 3 hours we had spent together that I had thought, for half a second, that she was making a joke. She had not laughed back. She had said, very calmly, "Iris, I am not joking. I will explain. Tonight, just agree. Please." I had agreed. She had left. I had unpacked my last box. I had eaten leftover pad thai. I had gone to bed at 11:30. At 12:43 in the morning, I had been pulled out of the first edge of sleep by the sound of a woman crying in the hallway outside my bedroom door. The crying was Hadassah's voice. I had been around her voice for 3 hours that afternoon. I knew what her voice sounded like. The crying voice was hers. The crying was in the small, wet shape of a person who had been crying for several minutes already and was trying to be quiet about it. Then there was a knock. 3 soft knocks on my bedroom door. The voice said, "Iris, Iris, please. I am so sorry. I lost my key. I had a really bad night at work. I do not have my phone. I left it at the hospital. I cannot get back in without you. Iris, please. I know I told you not to. I know I told you not to open the door. I am sorry. I am asking you to open the door anyway. I just need to get inside. Please." Hit subscribe. Drop your city in the comments. Stay all the way to the end of this video. There is a thing I found out in the 4 hours after that knock about the woman I had been living with for 11 days, and the figuring out has been the most important thing I have ever learned about how women survive things, and I want you to hear how I learned it. Listen the whole way through. I want to be clear about what it felt like to lie in my bed and hear that voice. I had agreed, 6 hours earlier, to a rule I had laughed at. The rule had seemed like a quirky thing my new roommate had asked me to humor, the kind of thing that a person who lives alone for a long time develops as a personality. I had not, when I had agreed, thought I would actually be tested on it. I had not thought the test would happen on my first night. The voice on the other side of my door was the voice of a woman in distress. The voice was using my name. The voice was saying things that a person who knew me, even barely, could have known to say. The voice was apologizing for asking me to break the rule. The voice was doing every single thing that a person genuinely in crisis would do. I lay in my bed. I did not move. I did not call out. I did not say anything. I tried to make myself breathe slowly. The knocking came again. 4 soft knocks this time. The voice said, "Iris, please. I am right outside. I just need to come in. I am cold. I am so tired. Please. I am sorry. I will not ask you to do this again. I am asking you tonight." I held very still. The voice was quiet for about 30 seconds. Then it said something different. The voice said, "Iris, are you awake? I can see the light under your door." I did not have a light on. I had been in bed in the dark. There was no light under my door. There was no light to see. That was the moment I understood, with the part of my body that knows things before the mind catches up, that whoever was outside my door was not Hadassah. I sat up in my bed, very slowly, very quietly. I picked my phone up off the small nightstand. The phone was on silent. I unlocked it. I pulled up the text conversation I had with Hadassah. I had texted her once that afternoon to thank her for the apartment tour. I typed with my thumbs, very quietly, on the screen, "Hadassah. There is somebody outside my bedroom door saying she is you. The voice sounds like you. Are you at work?" I sent it. I waited. She replied in 9 seconds. She wrote, "Yes, I am at the nurse's station. I am at work. Do not open the door. Do not respond. Do not make any sound. Are you in your bedroom with the door locked?" I wrote, "Yes." She wrote, "Good. Lock your window if it is not already locked. Quietly. Do not let her hear you move. I am calling the police now. They will be there in under 5 minutes. Do not move until you hear the buzzer for the front door of the building. Police will buzz up. Do not open any door until you hear my voice on speakerphone confirming it is them." I wrote, "Okay." The voice outside my door spoke again. The voice said, "Iris, I am going to leave if you do not open the door. I am asking one more time. Please." I did not move. The voice was quiet for about a minute. Then I heard footsteps. The footsteps were moving down the hallway, away from my door. The footsteps were going toward the front door of the apartment. The footsteps were quiet, careful, not the footsteps of a tired nurse coming home after a hard shift. The footsteps were the footsteps of a person who had been pretending to be a tired nurse coming home from a hard shift. I heard the front door of the apartment open. I heard the front door close. I heard footsteps moving down the building's hallway, away from our door. I heard the stairwell door at the end of the hallway open and close. Then I heard nothing. I lay in my bed in the dark with my phone in my hand, and I tried to figure out what had just happened. My phone buzzed. Hadassah had written, "Police are in your building. 2 officers, both female. Their names are Officer One and Officer Demaray. I am putting you on a 3-way call now with my supervisor and the lead officer. Pick up." The phone rang. I answered. Hadassah's voice came through. She said, "Iris, are you okay?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Stay in your room. The officers are about to buzz the building. I am going to tell you everything as soon as you are with them in your living room. The officers are going to clear the apartment. They are going to walk through every room. They are going to look in every closet. Once they have cleared the apartment, you and they and I are going to have a conversation. I am sorry. I am so sorry. I should have told you more before I left tonight. I did not want to scare you on your first day in a new apartment. I made the wrong call. I am sorry." The buzzer for the building rang. The officers came up. They knocked on the front door of the apartment in a way that was completely different from the way the voice in the hallway had knocked. They knocked the way police knock. Loud, brisk, clearly identifying themselves. I came out of my bedroom. I let them in. They cleared the apartment, room by room, with their flashlights. The apartment was empty. There was no one in any closet, in any cabinet, in any place a person could hide. They sat down with me in the living room. Hadassah was still on the phone. She was on speaker. She said, "Iris, the woman who came to the door tonight is not the first person who has done this to me. She is the 4th. I have been living in this apartment for 3 years. The first 3 times, I lived alone. The 4th time, which is tonight, you are here. I am going to tell you what I know. I am going to tell you what I do not know. I am going to tell you what I have been doing about it. And then I am going to tell you why I gave you the rule the way I did. And I am going to apologize for not telling you more. And I'm going to give you the option of breaking the lease at no cost to you if any of what I am about to tell you makes you want to leave. I will help you find a new place. I will pay for your moving costs. I have been preparing for the possibility that the person I rented to would not want to stay once she knew. I would understand." She told me. She told me with the officers in the room, who had heard most of it before, who were nodding while she talked. There was a woman, somewhere in the city, who had been impersonating Hadassah's voice for the last 2.5 years. The woman had a recording of Hadassah's voice. The recording was from a voicemail Hadassah had left, in 2021, for a person she had briefly dated, a man named Aton, who had recorded her voicemail without her knowledge and had played it for the woman who was now using it. The woman had taken the recording and had, over the next 2 years, learned to imitate Hadassah's voice well enough to fool a person who did not know her in person. The woman had been showing up at Hadassah's apartment in the middle of the night every few months, asking to be let in. The woman had been doing this since spring of 2023. The woman was Aitan's wife. Aitan, the man Hadassah had briefly dated, had been married the entire time. Hadassah had not known. Hadassah had ended the dating arrangement after 2 months when she had figured out, by accident, that he was married. She had cut contact. She had blocked his number. She had moved on. Aitan's wife had found out about Hadassah at some point in 2022. Aitan's wife had not handled it well. Aitan's wife had decided, in a way Hadassah had pieced together over the last 2.5 years, with the help of the police and a private investigator she had eventually hired, that Hadassah had ruined her marriage, and that Hadassah owed her a confrontation. Aitan's wife had been trying to get into Hadassah's apartment for 2.5 years to have that confrontation. Aitan's wife had been trying, in Hadassah's read of the situation, to do something to Hadassah inside the apartment. Aitan's wife had told her own therapist, in a session that had eventually been disclosed in a court proceeding, that she had been planning to make Hadassah understand what she had done. The police had a name. The police had a face. The police had been trying to build a case for 2.5 years that would let them charge her with something that would stick. The case had been hard because the wife had been very careful. The wife had never been caught on camera. The wife had never made a phone call that could be traced. The wife had never sent a written threat. The wife had only ever appeared at Hadassah's door, in the voice she had learned to imitate, asking to be let in. Hadassah had never opened the door. The wife had never gotten inside. The case, that night, was about to change. The wife had been recorded, this time, by a camera Hadassah had installed in the hallway 6 months earlier. The camera was disguised as a smoke detector. The camera had been recording continuously. The footage from that night showed the wife in clear view of the lens for almost 11 minutes. The footage included audio of the wife speaking, in Hadassah's voice, the lines she had used at my door. The footage also showed her, when she had thought no one was watching, dropping the voice and speaking in her own voice into her own phone, briefly, while she had been waiting in the hallway between knocks. She had said in her own voice into her phone, "She is not opening. I am going to give it 5 more minutes." The footage was, the lead detective on the case told me later that night, the cleanest piece of evidence they had gotten in 2.5 years. The voice on the recording would be matchable to her voice from other contexts. The footage put her, identifiably, at the door, with intent. The combination would, the detective said, be enough. Hadassah came home at 6:15 in the morning, when her shift ended. She had a small bag of pastries from the bakery on the corner. She made coffee. She sat down at the small kitchen table with me. We talked for 2 hours. I want to tell you what we talked about, because the talking was the part of this that has shaped my life since. I had been 26 years old that night. I had moved into the apartment because I had been recovering from a relationship that had not been a good one, in a way that I am not going to describe further than to say that I had been trying to build a quiet life. I had not been looking for a roommate with a story. I had been looking for an apartment with a low rent and a clean kitchen. Hadassah told me, over those 2 hours, about the last 2.5 years of her life. She told me how she had figured out, the first time it had happened, that the voice was not really her own. She told me how she had developed the protocol. She told me how she had told 3 previous roommates the rule, and how 2 of them had stayed and 1 of them had broken her lease and left. She told me how she had installed the camera. She told me how she had been working with the police. She told me how she had been seeing a therapist who specialized in stalking victims. She told me how the 2.5 years had reshaped her life. She told me how she had not, in those 2.5 years, opened her front door after midnight a single time, even when it had been a delivery person, even when it had been a neighbor, even when it had been somebody who had had every legitimate reason to be at her door. She told me, near the end of the conversation, that she had wanted to tell me the full story before I moved in. She told me that she had drafted the conversation in her head 12 times. She told me that every time she had tried to imagine saying it, the saying had sounded like she was either making a play for sympathy or trying to put a person off, and that she had not been able to figure out how to say it in a way that would not make the new roommate either run or stay for the wrong reasons. She told me she had decided, the morning of my move-in, to give me the rule and the explanation in two separate doses. She had given me the rule. The explanation had been planned for the morning after my first overnight in the apartment, over coffee, in daylight, when she had been off shift and could answer questions. The explanation had been planned for that exact morning. It had just been planned for a version of the morning in which the wife had not chosen the same morning to come to the door. She told me that she was sorry. She told me that I could leave. She told me that she would help me leave. She told me that she would understand. She told me, also, that if I decided to stay, she would tell me every single thing she knew about the case, and that we would update the rule together as the case progressed, and that the camera was going to stay in the hallway, and that the police were going to be more active in the building from now on because the footage had finally given them what they needed, and that the wife was likely going to be in custody within 72 hours, and that, after that, the rule was probably going to stop being necessary, although neither of us would know for sure how long that would take. I sat at the kitchen table. I drank my coffee. I ate a pastry. I thought about what to do. I want to tell you what I decided, because the decision has been the work of the last 14 months, and the work has been worth describing. I decided to stay. I decided to stay because the woman across the kitchen table from me had been, for 2.5 years, alone in a fight that nobody else in her life had really been part of. Her parents had not been close. Her closest friends had been supportive but had not been physically present in the apartment with her. Her 3 previous roommates had been in and out of her life on lease cycles. She had been managing a slow, continuous campaign of psychological harassment by a woman she had never wronged, with a recording of her own voice being used against her, by a person whose wife she had not known was Aitan's wife, and she had been doing it with discipline and intelligence and care. She had been doing it without falling apart. She had been doing it without becoming the version of a stalking victim that television had taught me to expect. She had been doing it by being a methodical woman who had developed a protocol and had followed her own protocol and had asked the people in her life, including a new roommate she had known for 3 hours, to follow it with her. The protocol had worked. The protocol had kept her safe for 2.5 years. The protocol had now, with the addition of a camera she had installed at her own expense and a roommate who had agreed to a rule without questioning it, produced the evidence that was going to bring the wife in. I decided to stay because the woman across the table from me was the kind of woman I wanted to be, and because the kind of woman I wanted to be did not run from another woman's hard story on the morning after a hard night. I told her I was staying. She cried a little bit. She had not cried in front of me yet. The crying was the small, careful crying of a woman who had not let herself cry for a long time and was letting herself cry only because somebody else had said the word stay. We went to bed. She slept for 9 hours. I slept for 6. When we woke up, in the late afternoon, we made dinner together for the first time. She made a vegetable curry that her grandmother had taught her how to make. I made naan from a recipe I had been working on for a year and had not been able to get right. We ate at her small kitchen table. We talked about books. We talked about her job at the hospital. We talked about my work as a freelance illustrator. We did not talk, mostly, about the night before. The wife was arrested 4 days later. She was charged with criminal stalking, criminal trespass, criminal impersonation, and several other things I do not remember the names of. She took a plea. She is currently in a state facility on a 5-year sentence. Aitan, who had been the original source of the voicemail, was charged separately with several things related to the unauthorized recording and distribution of audio of a person without her consent, which is a crime in our state. He took a smaller plea. He has been on probation for the last 14 months. He has not contacted Hadassah. Hadassah does not expect him to. The camera in the hallway is still there. Hadassah and I have decided to leave it for now. The smoke detector it is hidden in is also a real smoke detector. It does both jobs. I have lived in the apartment for 14 months now. Hadassah and I are not best friends. We are something better than best friends in a way I do not have language for. We are 2 women who shared a hallway on a Wednesday night when a third woman tried to come through a door and did not get through, and we have built, in the 14 months since, a small, careful friendship that has the shape of 2 people who know exactly how much trust costs. I want to leave you with one specific thing. There is a particular kind of safety that women have been building for each other, very quietly, in the small private spaces of their own lives, for as long as there have been women. The safety is not the kind that makes the news. The safety is not the kind that gets podcasts made about it. The safety is the kind that involves one woman telling another woman a rule, and the second woman agreeing to the rule without demanding to know the whole story behind it, and the rule then working when it has to work. Most of the rules women give each other are rules I have heard my whole life and have not always followed. Text me when you get home. Do not walk to your car alone after dark. If you are at a bar and your drink has been out of your sight, get a new drink. If you are at a party and somebody is making you uncomfortable, tell me and I will pretend to be your sister. These are small rules. The rules are small because the situations are small. The rules add up. Once in a while, the rule is bigger. Once in a while, a woman gives another woman a rule that sounds strange, that sounds paranoid, that sounds like the kind of rule the new woman might be inclined to roll her eyes at. The temptation to roll the eyes is the temptation to assume that the woman giving the rule is being dramatic. The assumption is almost always wrong. The woman giving the rule has, almost always, earned the rule the hard way, in a story she has not yet had time to tell you, in a story she may never have time to tell you. I am asking you, this week, if a woman in your life gives you a rule that sounds strange, to follow it without asking why. The asking why can come later. The following has to come first. Most of the time, the rule is not going to be tested. Once in a while, the rule is going to be the difference between a woman opening a door and a woman not opening a door, and the not opening is going to be the thing that produces, 3 days later, a phone call in which the police tell another woman, in another apartment, that they have finally caught the person who has been coming for her. The rule was, do not open the door if you hear me knocking after midnight. I did not open the door. The wife is in a state facility. Hadassah is asleep on the couch in the living room. The camera in the hallway is still working. The deadbolt on the front door of our apartment is the new one we installed together 3 months ago, the kind with the small reinforced strike plate. I am making tea. I am going to bring her a cup when she wakes up. We have an episode of a cooking competition show queued up on her laptop that we have been watching together every Thursday night for 14 months. She has been teaching me how to make her grandmother's vegetable curry. I have been teaching her how to make naan. The naan is finally, after 8 more months of trying, the way I had been wanting it to be. We are okay. I followed the rule. The rule held.